Welcome to Naresh IT Technologies. This is Vikram. Today we are going to discuss about AngularJS introduction. JavaScript, which is implemented on 1995 by Brendan. After few issues are there in JavaScript support and maintenance. So up to 2003 there is no more updations related to JavaScript, where the updations related issues overridden by Jquery in the year which is implemented and released in the year 2005. But few here and there some missing aspects are there when it comes to Jquery, like data binding, single page applications, model view controller development, and some more concepts which are not available when it comes to Jquery, where all these concepts are implemented along with AngularJS, where AngularJS is implemented in the year 2009 but released into the market in the year 2011. AngularJS is created by Mr.Vikram along with the team, and it is maintained by Google right now. Current version of AngularJS is version 1.5.x. Okay, this is stable one, and development version of AngularJS is 2.0, which is they just created it as a beta version. Now it is in a trial mode only. Okay, when it comes to version 1.5.x, it is following with the EC specifications of 2015. When it comes to beta version, it is along with EC 2015. Is supporting some advanced concepts, something like typescripting. We require to work with, when we require to work with 2.0, we need to have the basic understanding about typescripting also. Okay, now let us discuss about version 1.5.x. okay, because 2.0 is a trial mode only, so it requires some more time to get updated with respect to 2.0. Now in 1.5.x, basically AngularJS, it is a module driven development. We want to develop any kind of applications in AngularJS, at least we require one module. Okay, where AngularJS internally contains a concept called directives. Through these directives, we can able to inject the Angular related dynamic functionality into our static applications. Angular have a support called services, where we can able to create reusable components. It internally contains a support also for single page application development. Apart of this, Angular supports expressions. It internally have built-in feature for filters. It have to develop model view controller. It contains different kinds of objective patterns, where we can able to create MVC architecture applications, but it is not pure MVC. We can call them as MVW, model view whatever. We will discuss that model view whatever later. It internally contains support for Ajax. Then testing is also possible when it comes to AngularJS, and we don't require to focus on object creations when it comes to AngularJS, because Angular internally follows dependency injection, where objects can be managed by Angular itself. These are the internal aspects of AngularJS. Okay. Now AngularJS is implemented on top of Jquery. Okay, we require at least version of 1.7.x if we want to work Angular along with Jquery. AngularJS is adopted from many of the other technologies, inspired from many other technologies, something like Backbone, Qualys Promises, Jquery, and so on. AngularJS, the team observed from many other technologies, and whatever the missing aspects is with respect to the libraries, something like underscore or Jquery, Backbone, Knockout, all those missing aspects are implemented internally by AngularJS itself, and they give a feasibility to make the customization of your application structure. For example, they provided so many directives to focus on with our development. But if you want to create your custom directives, that aspect or that particular feasibility is provided by AngularJS, so that we can able to create our custom directives itself. They provided so many services internally, but if you want to create our custom services, that feasibility is also provided by Angular internally. So it is a kind of like a user friendly framework where we can adopt and go on with the development. Along with Angular, there is so many other frameworks in the market like Backbone, Ember, EXTJS, okay, and we can name it as Angular also. Okay, Backbone, which is handling only applications in MVC. Ember, whatever Angular can able to perform, the same things can be performed with Ember also, like MVC, data binding, and extension JS is also equivalent to Angular, we can say. So I can say MVC we can able to create, data binding, and etc. Okay, the same thing can be performed Angular also, we already seen. Now when it comes to Ember, JavaScript is a specific technology which is incorporated along with HTML. So when we are working with multiple technologies, something like HTML, CSS and JavaScript, we require something like plugin mechanism. But when it comes to Ember, this particular mechanism is not possible, because whatever the Ember syntaxes is there, it is totally different. So if we want to work with HTML along with Ember, we need to learn that particular syntaxes especially. So the learning curve for Ember is very huge. When it comes to extension JS, it is a best one, I can probably say, but obviously this is a paid source, so we can't able to use for small scale applications, at the same time for low budget applications. Okay, but when it comes to Angular, it is user friendly language. If any existing HTML applications we already have, we can easily incorporate Angular dynamic injections into our existing HTML applications using directives. And if you want to customize that any of the implementations, that also we can do. So it is very user friendly, I can say once again, and whatever the features is provided by Ember and extension JS, we can, the same things can be acquired when it comes to Angular also. Okay, Angular comparing to the execution perspective, comparing to Angular, Ember is very slow, and the learning curve for AngularJS is very easy, because we can integrate our Angular specific directives into existing HTML application itself. So I can rate myself Angular is the best option to work with latest technologies. Okay, so when it comes to AngularJS, to learn we require basic understanding of HTML and JavaScript. Okay, so this is all about introduction to AngularJS. What is the basic need of AngularJS? As we already know, when it comes to client side programming, along with HTML and CSS, we require some type of business logic where we need to handle client related all the operations like validations, DOM manipulations, or some sort of other things. So to handle that kind of business intelligence at the client side along with HTML and CSS, we need to depend on JavaScript. Okay, JavaScript is known as client side technology, through which we can able to handle business layer at the client side. Okay, coming to basic functionality about JavaScript, it is implemented in the year 1995 by Brendanich, and initial specification of JavaScript is made in the year 1997 by ECMA, European Computers Manufacturers Association. Now current version of JavaScript is ECMA 7, or we can call it as ECMA 2016 also. Now when JavaScript, when we are discussing about it, it is pure procedural language, and handling objects in JavaScript is little difficult. So at the same time, when it comes to JavaScript, we have some type of issues related to compatibility. For example, we will see a program. Here my requirement is I just want to create a program where I have one input element and one label. Whatever the content I am typing inside the input element, I want to get the data and show it inside the label. For assumption, store with the programs then and name it javascript.html. Now create an input element and put some label for that, so that end user can able to understand what he need to do with the input element. Enter text and create element input type is equals to text. Done. Now as part of our requirement, the data which we entered in input element, get the data and show the data using label. For that, view text label close label. So this is our DOM. Okay. Now when it comes to JavaScript, as we already know, without JavaScript we can't able to handle the business logic at the client side. Here when it comes to this particular program, when I am entering some data in my input element, I want to see the data in the label, which is not possible directly when I am using HTML or CSS. So to handle that particular business logic, we need to take help of JavaScript. So as we already know, head is the section where we can put all metadata information related to our application. Inside we have one particular tag called script, where we can create our client related business logic using JavaScript. So create a function here, give a name, any name you can give. I am just giving here bind, access input element using var input is equals to document dot get element by id. Now to access that particular input element in our function called bind, we require a unique reference to the input element, where we can give that one by using id attribute. So here give I for accessibility purpose and provide the same reference in our get document dot get element by id instruction. In the same way, get the label object also inside the bind function. Get element by id, here also the same thing only. We require a unique reference to access the label in our function. For that, using id we can able to provide that unique reference, give the reference as L. Now get the data from the input element using input dot value, assign this value to the label using label dot inner HTML is equals to. Now save this particular application. Now we are ready with the business logic, but this business logic will not execute by its own. We require some sort of events when it comes to browser respective. So bind this particular bind function using a event. Here we can use a event called on key up equals to bind function. So whenever I am pressing a key and releasing the key, this on key up event will be triggered, and whatever the binded function is there, so here the function name I just given as bind, this function will get executed, and whatever the instructions we provided inside this function, all those instructions is going to be executed, where we are handling getting the data from the input element, writing the data to the label. So reload the application, enter data, we can see that. Clear? Now here the point, when we are using JavaScript, the inner HTML mechanism which we are using here, maybe all browsers will not support this particular functionality. So we need to give some kind of workarounds here to check whether the browser will support inner HTML at that particular functionality or not, by using if window dot inner HTML like this. Okay. If the inner HTML is not supported, then we have to go with probably else statement and put label dot inner text is equals to input dot value. Okay. So in this way we need to handle this particular workarounds, or we can say compatibility check, where this is the issue when it comes to JavaScript, because browsers deals JavaScript in their own way. So one browser which supports a specific functionality may not supported by another browser. So it is always better to handle the compatibility when we are using plain JavaScript, where we can get rid of all these particular issues when we are using Jquery. Okay. For example, if I want to handle this particular application in Jquery, Control V, save it, HTML. So Jquery is not a default language supported by the JavaScript browsers. We need to import the Jquery library. Let me import. It is already downloaded and available in my system. Let me access that. Okay, I have Jquery library in my system, version of 2.2.0. So I am using the same one, myworks recordings program, and create a folder JS and put Jquery library into that particular folder. Now import that folder. The view will be remain same. We no need to make any changes inside the view. Let me deal with script src is equals to import Jquery library using JS Jquery-2.2.0 dot min dot JS. That's it. Now the preceding the functionality, we need to make a little changes in that. We can put that particular bind function as it is, but accessibility of the DOM will get changed. We can access Jquery functionality using $reference, and we can access the DOM. DOM means document object models, are the elements which we defined in our HTML body. Using, if we are using using ID, we want to access that one, we can prefix that particular ID with hash symbol and give the ID over there, so that we can able to, like this, we can able to access the DOM of our body. Okay. Dot, if I want to access the value of input element, I can use API called val. Now I want to access, this particular value I want to assign label. So the same thing, dollar prefix with hash, ID of label L dot, we can use text, another API, and pass that particular value as parameter, remove this semicolon and put it in the end. That's it. This is our Jquery functionality. Whatever the compatibility related we handled in our JavaScript application, this compatibility will be checked internally by Jquery library, this one. Okay. We no need to much worry about the compatibility checks when we are dealing with Jquery in our application. Okay. Now execute this particular application in browser, put Jquery, we are good with that. Okay. So this is the basic difference when we are handling Jquery along with JavaScript. Okay. But here the point is, when I am entering some data in my input element, I can able to see the same data in my label. Okay. Here also in the JavaScript we can do the same thing. But if I want to make some changes to the label in my function, in my JavaScript function, here assume that I want to assign the data to my label. Okay. For assumption, I am just scroll back a little bit here. Okay. First I am assigning label.innerHTML is equals to the input value. Next I am assigning label.innerHTML is equals to something like new. Okay. I am just providing label content for assumption. Now I want to see the same data label content to my input element also. I need to assign that particular value to my input element. Okay. First let us execute the application. Here put enter, in label we can see label content, but when I am typing in my input element, I can see the same value. The value is not getting changed to the label content. If we want to make that particular value visible in our input element 2, we need to reassign label content like this. Okay. So, reload the application. If you enter some value, you can able to see the same thing. The point is here label content is unique value, but to get the unique value in two different objects, for example here label and input element, we are reassigning 2 times to the both objects, which is not recommended if we are using some kind of observer pattern along with some kind of model object definitions, which is not supported when it comes to plain JavaScript. The same thing is not possible when it comes to jQuery also, where we can depend on AngularJS to get that kind of facility. Okay. So, let us take the same example, paste it and make it as angular.html, save it. Now, AngularJS is implemented internally using by jQuery implementations only, but still we require AngularJS implementation or AngularJS library, which is already downloaded and available in my system. So, let me grab that lib. Okay, in my system I have the Angular version 1.4.9 and put this one inside our application JS folder. Now, change this particular thing to angular.min.js. Okay. Now, the AngularJS library is available in our application. Okay. Now, Angular internally already implemented data binding. So, you no need to worry about these particular implementations if something is get changed, so that you need to put some kind of observer pattern over there and identify the changes and put the changes into some other element. All this stuff is not required when we are using AngularJS. So, you can simply rid of these particular implementations rather than Angular using a concept called directive, where you can put some dynamic operations related to Angular provided using these directives associated to our HTML elements. For that, first we require a directive called ng-app. This directive informs that our application using some Angular specific implementations. Okay. The next directive we have to use is ng-model. This directive will bind a model object to a input element. Let us say the model object I am just giving it as m. Here m is representing the value which we are entering into input element. So, the same model object we can reassign to our label also by using a directive called ng-bind is equals to m. Okay. Now, execute this application inside the browser, Chrome, enter AngularJS. That is it. So, here the point is whatever JavaScript is handling, I mean we handle that one, that particular data binding. The same thing we handled in our jQuery also, the same thing we handled in our AngularJS also. But when it comes to JavaScript and jQuery, we need to put some manual operations or manual functionality over there to handle the data binding. The same thing by defaultly available in AngularJS. So, here when it comes to JavaScript, if I am making some kind of changes to make that particular data binding available, we need to reassign the same data to different kinds of objects. When it comes to AngularJS, it is not required, because we just created a unique reference called m, where we can represent this particular m as a model object, and if you provide any value. So, for example, here I am using another directive called ng-init is equals to m equals to label content. Okay. So, now I just assigned a new value called label content to m model object. So, m contains the same value which is going to display in our input element at the same time in label also. Let us plan re-execute, so you can see that. Okay. So, this is internally it is implementing observer pattern. Through that it can able to handle the data binding in our AngularJS applications. This is all about AngularJS data binding. Thank you.